Welcome to Vigilant News for January 28th, 2022. I'm Justin, founder of Stillness in the Storm, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Delarm, founder of Underground Newswire. Ryan, how are we doing today?
Hey, the world is my oyster. Good to be here, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We got a bunch of great news for you today. Pittsburgh bridge collapses hours before Biden's visit, and they're already starting to spin campaigns there. Corolla blasts the media over Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan seems to be owning the news cycle, as some pundits have said. Virginia Republican goes off on Democrats, an epic rant. We'll get a kick out of that. A woman who came into contact with the CDC monkeys shares an update to the situation. We have the Marvel actress who was also in Lost, has made a really admirable position on the whole vaccine mandates things. We'll get into that. Elon Musk calls Biden a damp sock puppet, probably not too far off. And
accurate.
Yeah, shows the support for the trucker thing. Then we got a bunch of rapid fire. There's so much, I'm not even necessarily get into it, but you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the second episode of Devolved. So before we get started, don't forget to check the links in the description. We still get that pine pollen promotion. The supplies are limited. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and check it out. You're going to get 10% off your first order when you use the promo code Justin10. That's Justin, Justin 10, the number like 10. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the videos. And with that, let's go ahead and get into our first story. Ryan, what do we got on the docket?
We have the bridge collapsing in Pittsburgh just hours before Joe Biden's visit. Conveniently, he's going there to talk about infrastructure. So 10 people were injured when a snow-covered bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed Friday morning, just hours before President Joe Biden is scheduled to visit for a previously arranged trip to discuss infrastructure. Wow. According to Pittsburgh Fire Chief Daryl Jones, 3 people were taken to local hospitals, though none have had life-threatening injuries. Thank God. Mm-hmm. It sounded like a huge snowplow pushing along the surface with no snow, says neighbor Wendy Straw. I didn't know what it was. It was very frightening. We got some pictures here. It's beautiful and frightening, these images, really.
Yeah.
And then we got Rachel Scott here talking about it, mentioning how Joe Biden's about to talk about the infrastructure there. So several cars and a Port Authority bus, which contained the 3 individuals who've been hospitalized, were involved in the collapse. And of course, Mayor Ed Gainey used the collapse to highlight the city's infrastructure funding needs. Just hours before Joe Biden's scheduled speech in Pittsburgh about the historic $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan, Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey said the bridge over Hot Dog Dam Dog Park was inspected just late September, which
and explosives were planted accordingly.
No. Yeah, or was intentionally neglected after inspection.
Exactly. Yeah.
The bipartisan infrastructure law is critical, Gainey said. At the end of the day, it's critical that we get this funding. Who is, what he means by that. Mm-hmm. He's going to be getting some funding, all right. And there's a clip you can listen to him talk. I have some, a few things to say in regards to this. Of course, the cult of personality Twitter goblins of the world are already pointing their fingers at Manchin and Sinema for, what they did. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's not about senators. It's the engineers who work for the government. They're supposed to do maintenance and inspect these things and report the issues. Now, to the undiscerning or ignorant of the world, they can say, isn't that a part of the infrastructure? To which I would say that no amount of money is going to fix incompetence and intentional, mismanagement.
That's right.
Second of all, these folks must not have read the infrastructure bill. Daycare and electric cars and endless amounts of launderable funds is not infrastructure. The bill is a graft, and thankfully, even some Democrats are uncomfortable with it. Imagine trying to blame the GOP and not the Dems who sacked the other crap along with it, basically.
Wow. We
need infrastructure, but we don't need all this woke BS thrown into the bill, basically. Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, I got 2 words: golden toilet seats. Back in the 1980s, the New York Times reported that there were, I actually think it was $100 toilet seats, but I believe there were also golden toilet seats somewhere during the Iraq War. But essentially, there's a long-standing racket, we might say, or pilfering that happens where public officials say, hey, we got this major problem. We need to throw money at it. They throw a bunch of money at it. It turns out that the things that get purchased have very little, if any, effect on the problem. And essentially, it's a giant money grab. Now, is that what's happening here? I don't know, but it's pretty damn convenient. Biden bombs with respect to the infrastructure bill. Manchin doesn't push forward. So now he needs to drum up more support for it. What better way to have a bridge collapse right when he happens to be in Pennsylvania?
And you got CNN and Twitter handing out the marching orders to the cult of personality, freaks out there in the world that are like,
exactly,
have no idea what they're talking about and have not read the infrastructure bill.
That's it. And that's the big thing is, substance matters. Yeah, it sounds good that we need to replace our infrastructure, but at the end of the day, if this bill doesn't actually do that, then it's just another money grab. So pretty interesting. Let's move on to our next story, which is sorry about that. Hold on one second, folks. A woman came into accidental contact with CDC escaped monkeys, provides an update. So let me pull that up. This is a pretty brief one, so we won't spend too much time on this. But this is coming from 100% Fed Up. So for those of you who aren't aware, about 100 monkeys in Pennsylvania crashed, and there were some pretty suspicious things going on. We actually have a post coming out on Stillness in the Storm about that from the organic prepper. She discusses some of the very interesting facets. So I'm just going to get right to the update. And this is coming from the Epic Times. Quote, a woman who said she came into contact with escaped monkeys provides an update and she's not sick. She says, I want people to know I am not sick. I found that I was at a birthday party Friday night and people there had COVID-19. Michelle Fallon told local news outlet The Daily Item. Quote, I was exposed to the monkeys and exposed to people with COVID. It was the worst day of my life. Not exactly sure what she means by that. Was it the monkeys was the worst day of her life, or was it going to this birthday party was the worst day of her life?
Because of the COVID, the great fears.
Right, yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at.
Sounds like something Typhoid Mary would say.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Fallon, meanwhile, said she was only taking precautions from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention and state health officials. Quote, I explained what happened and they said I was at very low risk of anything, but I went to get checked out anyway because I started not to feel well, Fallon told the newspaper. She continues, I wanted people to know I am not sick, regardless of what they are reading that has been put out there in the media. She continued, I only spoke to a few media outlets, but I have been talking to PETA. So, she kind of insinuates in her commentary that the media tends to overblow things. So I don't know what her affiliation is with any of, COVID or politics or whatnot, but in my mind, just as a little sidebar, it's interesting that media hyperbole and things of this nature are so common knowledge that even she's talking about it. So does that mean that there's nothing to worry about with this? Not necessarily. She didn't really provide a whole lot of details. I'm still not entirely convinced that some type of event might not be playing out.
Yeah, something to keep our eyes on, that's for sure.
Certainly. All right, with that, let's get into our next story, which is...
We got Adam Carolla on Fox News saying, what have you guys been right about? Talking about, the mainstream media over this whole Joe Rogan controversy, which I find hilarious because Joe Rogan is the biggest threat to the mainstream media right now.
Right.
So we had comedian Adam Carolla slamming the media over their demand that Joe Rogan be censored for pushing, quote, misinformation, asking them, what have you guys been right about? That's a valid question. So Fox News host Sean Hannity asked Carolla why people demanding for Rogan to be censored couldn't just choose not to listen to him. And to which he responded, basically, we've decided there's one lane you can be in when it comes to COVID. And if you get outside of that lane, you need to be shut down, the comedian responded. Carolla said it was ironic how traditionally anti-establishment figures like rockers and artists were now doing the bidding of the establishment, a la Anti-Flag, Rage Against the Machine, Neil Young now. There's a clip you can watch. It's like 5 minutes long. Okay. So I don't know if you want to watch all that.
That's right. We can let them watch it.
So he says, their job is to push back against the man. And Neil Young should have known that the man isn't Joe Rogan. The man is Dr. Fauci. The man is Governor Gavin Newsom. The man is the CDC, the WHO. The man is Biden, said Carolla. That's who the man is. You're an old rocker. You're supposed to push back against the man. Joe Rogan is pushing back against the man, and you're pushing back against Joe Rogan. Carolla then made a mockery of legacy media outlets, shows like The View, constantly complaining about COVID misinformation. What have you guys been right about? He asked. You closed the beaches down. You closed the schools down. Cloth masks were going to save us all. The vaccine was going to be effective. Natural immunity wasn't effective. What have you been right about?
Oh man, that's so brilliantly
Giving
played.
it to him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The comedian then asserted that he would be confident in putting Joe Rogan's batting average up against CNN's batting average any day of the week, referring to CNN's infamous dismissal of ivermectin as horse dewormer. It's my favorite horse dewormer, I guess.
Yeah, prefer it.
Corolla returned to the issue of Neil Young demanding his music be removed from Spotify, remarking, guys like Neil Young, who back in the day would have been on the side of natural immunity, are now on the side of Big Pharma and pushing back against natural immunity. So the whole thing is upside down, and he's exactly correct.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
It's interesting to remember that he shared a show with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, you were mentioning that this morning. I almost totally forgot.
And now they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. I
right.
can't imagine they're the best of friends anymore, unfortunately.
Was Dr. Drew somebody else? I thought Dr. Drew did something with Corolla at one point, but
maybe. The first time I ever heard of Corolla was the Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, finally, somebody with a popular following, might say a celebrity, is naming the obvious, which is that what we often call rebellion and anti-establishment in the mainstream is totally establishment. And, this whole situation with Spotify and Neil Young is a perfect example of that. So
it kind of lends credence to that whole, the CIA infested the counterculture back in the 70s, with
right.
what was it? What's his name? The Laurel Canyon stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Frank Zappa?
Frank Zappa. Well, I don't know if he did it per se, but his father was a military father who worked in intelligence, I want to say, or biowarfare. That's it. And yeah, the Laurel Canyon was just like a hotbed of manufactured influence and cultural steering, it seems like. So but yeah, I mean, this is not a new thing. The powers that be have known that they can steer culture and therefore control the herd through culture, through celebrities, through things like this for a very long time, like thousands of years. They've just gotten really good at it in the modern age, I would say. So
what's funny is that you can distill all of our differences and problems between us, like just regular Americans, down to a lack of knowledge of how prolific and embedded the CIA is in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah,
that's it. That's really all it is. If you understand that, the rest of it makes sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there's CIA is so involved in so much cultural influencing agency, we might be able to call them.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, speaking of celebrities doing cool things, we got another one up on the docket. Marvel actress hounded for standing up against vaccine mandates. Okay, so even Joe Lilly is I guess that's her name. I didn't know that's what's her name. Evangeline Lilly. Thank you. Evangeline Lilly. So she's also from Lost. That's where I first saw her. So Marvel actress, I don't know, I have a hard time saying this. Evangeline Lilly has been hounded and attacked online for publicly declaring her opposition to vaccine mandates. Lilly shared photos after attending a Defeat the Mandates rally in Washington, D.C., captioning the images, quote, "I believe nobody should ever be forced to inject their body with anything against their will, under any threat whatsoever. It's not the way." I didn't think of this until I read her statement right here. Being forced to have something injected in you is essentially a euphemism for rape, so it is a form of rape in that sense. Lilly added, "This is not safe. This is not healthy. This is not love. I understand the world is in fear, but I don't believe that answering the fear with force will fix our problems." Couldn't agree more, Lilly. And with that, the bitter backlash ensued with calls for her immediate cancellation.
And Twitter lives up to what it was designed for.
Yeah, seriously. So we already got this check mark talking about recasting her. He says, recast, immediate. They should have recast Letitia Wright. They should recast Evangeline Lilly, and nothing that special about them. There are much more talented and sane actors out there who can take up their spot and make them safe. Set a safe space.
As long as I can see my shows.
I know. It's like, well, first of all, they're actors. I mean, the whole point is that they're portraying another person. What does it really matter what their personal opinions are, as long as they're not, criminals, But somehow an actor not representing our worldviews makes enjoying the media they produce not good enough.
I still love Alec Baldwin in 30 Rock, but I think he's a pile of garbage.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good point. Evangeline Lilly is in Marvel films, and apparently she would rather be struck in a production of Steel Magnolias at the Waco Playhouse with Christy Swanson and Gina Carano. So another blue check mark, just throwing shade. So I'll let you guys continue this exposition of the worst parts of humanity on Twitter.
The great digital high school lunchroom that is Twitter, public
Exactly.
shaming ritual central.
But, you know, this is just goes to show you, just to speak to this, is this thing called pacing in hypnosis, where when you can speak to what a person's personal reality is, then that often makes them feel fellowship and camaraderie with you. And then that can often help provide a way to deal with various psychological issues. So I think it's an important facet for the control system that they use celebrities as a mouthpiece for their agenda, and anyone who steps out of line with that has to get summarily executed, you know, or canceled, as we call it now. So the fact that these celebrities are willing to do this anyway, you know, seriously, heroic for these people, and I'm glad it's going to help other people in the public. All right, well, with that, let's get to our next story, which is... We
have a Virginia Republican going off on Democrats in epic rant. So
awesome.
This is coming out of the Gateway Pundit. Republican state rep, no, got to pop up, sorry. Republican state rep Nick Freitas of Virginia has had enough of Democrats accusing anyone who opposes them of racism and sexism. It's like a joke at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like turning me into a racist and a sexist, I swear to God.
Right.
During a floor speech this week, he went after Democrats for this, and his speech was so amazing that it got applause afterwards.
Okay.
Other Republicans should study this speech. Real Clear Politics provides a partial transcript, but actually better than that, I think we have the video.
We sure do.
Down here, we can just play it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was asked by a colleague of mine on the other side of aisle, someone I actually deeply respect, and she asked me, was I going to be nice this session? And I thought it was an interesting question. I don't particularly think of myself as an unnice person, but I can see how sometimes people would see that differently. But you know what I've never done, Mr. Speaker? I've never got on this floor and I've challenged the faith of an elected official because I disagreed with them on policy. I've never gone on this floor, Mr. Speaker, and suggested that the other side of the aisle were racist because they didn't agree with my particular policy positions. I've never suggested they were sexist because they didn't agree with my particular policy positions. But I'm keeping a running tally so far of this session. We're not very far into it. And almost every day, someone on the other side of the aisle either gets up and either subtly or comes right out and suggests that if you don't agree with them on policy, well, then you're not a Christian. You're a sexist. You're a bigot. You're a racist. But the moment someone actually stands up and says, wait a second, no, I'm not going to accept that. If you want to debate me on the merits of our particular policies, I am happy to have that discussion. But the moment you claim, with no evidence other than we don't agree on a particular policy position, the moment you claim that that makes us racist or sexist or bigoted, Mr. Speaker, I've got news. This was tried during the election cycle. You had a lot of parents coming to their local elected officials asking questions about what was going on in their schools. And the initial response was, oh, it's not there. And then when they saw evidence that it was, based off of what their kids were coming home and saying to them, and they went back and reissued the concern, then they got told, oh, well, then you must be a racist. Because that has been the repeated narrative coming from certain members of the other side of the aisle. And there's been a lot of times where we've sat here politely and just took it. Mr. Speaker, not this time. I'm tired of it. My constituents are tired of it. Because when these claims are made, they're not just made against Governor Youngkin. They're not just made against us. They're made in part against the people that elected to send us here. And I don't know a single person in this chamber that I would define as racist or sexist or bigoted. We have very different ideas about how to get to particular end states where all Virginians can be happy, healthy, prosperous, and free. But just so I'm very clear, will I be nice this session? I would certainly like to be, but I'm not about to sit here and listen to that, Mr. Speaker, and then go home to my constituents and have them ask me, why didn't you stand up and defend us? So let's have a robust policy discussion. But if you're going to question the faith or the intentions of anybody that happens to disagree with you on policy, then you don't get to lecture us on compassion, tolerance, or an open debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That was awesome. Great stuff. Okay.
Yeah, but that one guy looked like he was dead in the background.
I know this dude right here. Like, where is he? I don't know. I should move this thing. This guy. Right
Yeah, he's flatlined.
I did see him move a little bit, so I know he's alive.
Okay.
But yeah.
Death rattles.
Yeah, but there you go. That's again another example of what happens when somebody with positions of power and social clout speaks to the sentiments of what people are feeling and how powerfully that can galvanize a crowd and inspire people. So great stuff coming out of that. Coming out of the Virginia legislature.
That's the thing, man. For his bunch, like, where was racism for all those other years? You know what I mean? I guess they want to make it seem like it was there. And it's not like it's not a problem, but it's definitely become something now that is just used when you are failing in an argument, you resort to racist, sexist, this and that. And it's sad because it's usually not true.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, it's an ad hominem attack. If I'm trying to talk to you about where we should go for dinner and you're like, well, what do you know? You don't like apples. It's like, well, what the heck does my not liking of apples have anything to do with the point where we're trying to decide to go to dinner necessarily?
You don't want Mexican food? What are you, racist?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Mexicans aren't a race, as it turns out. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But yeah, so it's just one last thing on that is they've redefined racism. That's why they had to redefine racism over the past 80 years. Is because now racism can mean anything you want it to mean. And as soon as you've thrown the label of racist on there, then that person is just as guilty as a KKK member who's hung a bunch of black people or beat them or whatever, just as guilty as a Nazi who's killed a bunch of Jews, just as guilty as, a Turkish person who's killed a bunch of Armenians, or that last one we don't hear too much about. But you see what I'm saying? It's like you throw somebody in that category. So as somebody who cares about intellectual integrity, it really grinds my gears, we'll put it that way. So with that, let's get into the next one, which is Elon Musk labels Biden a damp sock puppet and tweets support for anti-vaccine mandate truckers.
That's an accurate assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. This guy is an interesting character for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got some shadiness in his past, some of the things he's been attached with and has done to other people. But,
right.
Who's perfect? No one.
Precisely. Tesla CEO Elon Musk once again slammed Joe Biden in social media posts, responding to remarks about U.S. manufacturing, calling Biden a damp sock puppet. For those of you who don't know, a sock puppet account on social media is essentially a fake account. It's like another person who creates an account so they can talk about things they can't do with their official account. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Musk reacted after Biden tweeted, quote, "I meant it when I said the future was going to be made right here in America," along with a video of him conversing with General Motors CEO Mary Barra. Quote, "Companies like GM and Ford are building more electric vehicles here at home than ever before," Biden's tweet also read, completely ignoring Musk's electronic car empire. Musk hit back, starts with a T, ends with an A, ESL in the middle. That's funny. So that's this right here. So, Biden is ignoring Musk, and it's not necessarily clear why, but I have a few ideas. In a further tweet, Musk charged that Biden is treating the American public like fools. So there's that tweet. Musk has a point. Even that Tesla's Model Y and Model 3, both made domestically, are by far the top-selling electric vehicles in the U.S., ahead of GM and Ford. And somebody basically is saying that. It's not the first time Musk has expressed anger towards Biden in this way. Last year, Musk responded to someone who asked why Biden continues to ignore SpaceX Inspiration 4 mission, the world's first all-civilian crew spaceflight that has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for charity. He's sleeping. Well, when you're never alive to begin with, and that's a problem too. Musk has also been called a sock puppet before. Musk has also called Biden a sock puppet before, referring to the president's relationship with the United Workers Auto Union. Tesla fact, shameless, the infamous $4,500 UAW bribe in the Build Back Better Act, HR 5376, includes employee-owned U.S. car factories such as Tesla, even if they form a union. It defines domestic assembly qualifications in a way that requires 50% non-shareholder employees. Biden is a UAW sock puppet. Wow, it just keeps going. So Musk has called Biden Build Back Better bill insane, reasoning that adding trillions to the national deficit isn't the way forward. Aside from shaming Biden, Musk also took time to express support for the now 45-mile-long convoy of Canadian truckers protesting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's vaccine mandates. CB radios are free from the government media control. Despite there now being some 50,000 trucks making up the convoy, a huge swell of support among Canadians, Trudeau has called it a fringe movement. That's what he was talking about today.
Yeah.
Or I think it was actually
we
2 days ago. Yeah.
No, we ran a story yesterday on it.
Yeah. The statement happened on the 26th, so 2 days ago.
I see.
Musk also followed up with more general comments about his feelings on government mandates. If you scare people enough, they will demand removal of freedom. This is a path to tyranny. So, we've got really good commentary from Musk coming out. And, what are some of the thoughts on this?
I don't know. I've heard he screwed some people over and lied about his past, talking about growing up poor when his family owned an emerald mine in Africa, kind of like hijacking PayPal and some other things, some shady stuff. But, I wasn't there. I don't know. I've seen these allegations. I haven't seen the proof. I like what he's saying. That's for sure. I'm sure he's a lot happier now that he's not with Grimes anymore.
Right, yeah, good.
I don't know. Maybe he was tapped by people in the military. I mean, he's still pushing that Neuralink thing, but like the presentation of the Neuralink was kind of like uncomfortable. Like It wasn't like they were really pushing it. I don't know. It's hard to say. I can't even.
Yeah, it is difficult to say.
There's so many complexities there probably that it's hard to like.
Certainly. Well, I think it speaks to the fact that the line of good and evil is not easy to make. I mean, just because somebody's a billionaire doesn't mean they're 100% evil. And we often have an overly simplified thought process when it comes to these things, or at least some people do. As you start to do your research and you start to look at history and how things actually unfold, you quickly realize that, things are shifting around all the time, especially good versus bad guys. And in my opinion, I'm hardly an expert on Musk, but it seems like Musk is probably a guy who's not directly in control or directly being controlled like somebody like Biden, who was probably like literally an MK Ultra kind of, victim, we might say. But he might have luminaries. He might have people around him that are whispering things in his ear, trying to get him to do things. So that might be happening. All right. Well, with that, let's get into our rapid fire today.
All right. First, we have court finds Pennsylvania mail-in voting law unconstitutional, which is huge considering that was one of the big hotbeds for mail-in voting. We also have an estimated 2 million ballot images from 2020 election were illegally erased in Georgia. Why is no one held accountable or indicted?
No kidding.
Maybe that'll come down the pipe later. Finally, New York Times admits unvaxxed people have lower rates of infection and hospitalization of COVID-19 than the vaxxed. Yet people will still hound you as if that was never published.
Right.
And a New Hampshire bill would make ivermectin available for COVID without a prescription, which is amazing.
Awesome.
I mean, it already is. You can order it from out of country. We've done
Yeah, exactly.
And, but this making it easier, I'm all for that.
Agreed. Yeah, that's really good news. Hopefully that actually goes through, because it seems like that could have saved a lot of people's lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. And next up, we have report documents of 1,000 plus cases of state-sponsored slavery in Cuba. Admittedly, I wish I had a little more time to talk about this, but take a look at the video we put up about Jan Psaki. Thank you. And it talks about the substance of slavery, and it appears we have a really good example of this. As it turns out, unlike what we've been told, slavery has not been abolished in the way we think it has. So
no, especially not in places like China and Cuba.
Bingo.
Man, we could do a whole video on China and Cuba.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And as it turns out, there's also a relationship, I'd argue, between being armed and having slavery. And the next up we got, here we go, new Omicron variant. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people already probably have heard about this. If you haven't already, they've got another variant that they're already talking about, Omicron variant BA.2. So that I'm sure we're going to be hearing about ad nauseum. And we also have China. That's a great image, right?
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it. China began subjecting American diplomats to anal COVID-19 tests right after Biden was inaugurated.
It's like cue the Jaws music.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, yeah, this is coming from Judicial Watch's emails that they got in Freedom of Information requests. You know, it's one of these moments of divine comedy almost. Like, the Americans have been getting effed up the butt for years by the Chinese, and now it's actually happening with respect to COVID tests. I thought that was kind of funny.
It's pretty funny.
All right, and then lastly, we've got this clip here real quick. Psaki let slip that she's working for President Obama. So let's take a listen to that.
But a little bird told me that you said you might be resigning the job this year. Say it isn't so. Is it true?
I don't know when I'm leaving. This is an honor and a privilege, and I love working for President Biden every single day. I love working for President Biden every single day.
Oh boy.
Oh my
So how does a Freudian slip happen? I mean, I don't know. I would say Freudian slips happen because at least the ideas are in your head. So at the very least, she might think to herself that she's basically working for Obama, but maybe she literally is working with Obama on a daily basis.
100% Obama is pulling the strings of this organization. There's no doubt in my mind about it.
Yeah.
I wish we had the clip queued up where he was just talking about like sitting in the basement with the sweatpants on, talking into a mic, and then someone speaking his words. Like,
yeah,
that's what we're seeing today.
And we've heard, I think there was another clip from the Devolves too, which we're going to get into. We saw last night. Talking about him we might get a third term Obama term after all. So he's been talking about this stuff for a while now. So there's all the news for you. But before we get finished up with everything, I wanted to show you guys that Devolved has come out. So we have, I'm going to show you real quick, just share the screen here for a second. So if you haven't seen Devolved episode 1, that's what this is. This is coming out from Dauntless Dialogue. They produce amazing work. Adam Reeve, a good friend of ours. And it's gone viral, as you can see. It's got 186,000 views. And the second episode is also out. You can just go click on the channel here. We also have the links inside the description. Devolved 2. Phenomenal work. He does fantastic work there. And I'm really glad that he's getting the support he needs to keep producing stuff like this. So with that, don't forget to check the links in the description. We still got that promotion. Don't forget 10% off your first order. Could be like $10,000 you spend at Ascent Nutrition. You're going to save $1,000 on that. I mean, that's a lot of pine pollen. So you might not be using that for the rest of your life, but you can get it. So check that out. Also, don't forget to share, share, and subscribe our videos. We need all the help we get. We're getting shadow banned like crazy. And with that, we'll see you next time on Vigilant News. Take care.